Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host, Mark Iorio, and I've got John O'Connell with me today. And John is the founder and CEO of the Oasis Group and the author of The Rise of the Activist Investor, which we'll talk about. Talk about other stuff.
Yes.
We're talking about this.
Yes.
I want to talk about this. I want to talk about what this is.
Excellent.
And ask you about the Oasis Group and welcome you back to the studio. You've been
Thank
here.
you.
Like you're like one of the Johnny Carson kind of guys, you know, the ongoing guest, which I love. I think it's great.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
John, it's a pleasure. It really is.
Thank you.
Talk about the rise of the activist investor and why you wrote the book.
Okay.
And what you hope to get out of it.
So I started my career in financial services in '92 at Merrill Lynch, and from that point on, I started in, believe it or not, as a programmer, and then from there I wound up moving into sales. I went back to Merrill in 2005 for kind of the end of Merrill there at the end. And then I went back into more sales roles, and I created my company in 2019. But the idea of Rise of the Activist Investor had been in my head pretty much for about 5 years. I had done my MBA at Rider, and during that MBA, I focused a lot on investments. My MBA is in finance. And when I took a look at a lot of the confluence of what was happening over the past decade, and I looked at even my own children and what they were asking me about from an investing perspective and what should they do.
Sure.
That's where the idea really came from. So what caused me actually to write the book is someone turned to me and said, "Are you ever going to do that, or is it just kind of a bucket list idea?"
In your head, yeah.
So I wound up hiring an editor, and then once I was paying someone to keep me accountable because I had to give them things. Then that's really what spurred me to get the book done. But it did take about 14 months for me to write the book.
Yeah. So what the essence of it, John? What are you looking to get out of the whole idea of the activist investor? What is an activist investor in your mind?
So I actually I invented an activist investor arc in the book. That's a 6-step arc. Yep. And I think people find themselves in different portions of that arc depending on where they are in their lives.
Yep.
So let me give you an illustrative example of that.
Sure.
So many young people today have been through about a decade of social movements, right? So that started with Occupy Wall Street, that went through the Women's March, the women's movement, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, the indigenous population movement here in the United States, and this has been going on globally. So when you think of that, you look at these young investors who truly believe that their money should reflect their values. Now, that sounds great, but in many cases, these investors don't have enough investable assets at the moment to really either work with a financial advisor or, they're just starting out on that journey. So here you have activist-minded investors who want to be able to have their money reflect their values, and they need some guidance on that. And that's hopefully what I'm accomplishing with the book. So the illustrative example is when you're younger, you may be a passive activist. In other words, you're investing in ETFs, mutual funds, socially responsible investing, maybe ESG ETFs, but you're basically trying to choose investments that match not only what you'd like to achieve from a return perspective, but also what you'd like to achieve socially, what matches your values.
Right.
And then that can run the gamut from being a passive activist to a voting activist, where you're actually voting proxies as they come to your house. You get to vote on these proxies as they come out from a company. You can become an influencer activist, where you're actually on social media trying to find like-minded people to talk about activism. Or you can become a professional activist, where you are truly investing in companies that you're hoping to change the direction of the company, either through an open letter to the shareholders or through ultimately achieving a board seat.
Yeah. Now, a lot of times, over the years, especially since I think 78, when a lot of the SEC regulations changed to get individuals to manage their own portfolio more so, right? 401ks, 403bs, all those sorts of IRAs, right? SEP IRAs. Now I'm managing my own money in a sense. And a lot of times, John, individuals are not equipped, they don't understand the financial markets. What advice do you have for them? I mean, in terms of if you're going to be an activist investor, right, or you're going to be an investor generally, what advice do you give them?
So I think you're 100% right. You know, the mistake of the 401k ruling blew out and created this entire industry around 401k.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually intended to do that originally, but what you've seen since really like you had mentioned, 78 it basically started. In the 80s, it really began to shift. And now what you found is before, there was the vast majority of money were in pension funds.
Yep.
Now it would be difficult for you to find a pension fund outside of a civil job, right?
Yeah.
Cop, fireman, sanitation.
Yep.
So even teaching has moved away from pension fund systems and has really moved towards this 40, pick your
Series.
number at the
Yeah,
end of
yeah,
that,
yeah.
the 40 series. So what you're finding today is, if you looked at global AUM, over 50% of global AUM now sits in the hands of a retail investor, an individual investor, and they do need help. Just like, you know, if you have your own business, you would probably not do your own taxes. You would go to a professional, a CPA, to get your taxes done.
Sure.
The same thing I would recommend for any investor. If you are focused on your career, if that's not your full-time job and you are not educated in doing that, I highly recommend you seek a professional's help. Now, there are a lot of RIAs today, registered investment advisors, where you are not able to, or they have a minimum investable assets that you would want to have. So for example, a lot of RIAs may have a minimum of $200,000 for you to be able to invest with them. What I recommend for an individual investor who either wants to follow activist investing and have their money reflect their values, or they're just investing in general, I highly recommend you find a investment advisor who will work with you on a periodic basis. Now, if you don't meet their minimums, ask them the question, do you offer financial planning for a fee?
Right.
Right? So they can give you, they can help you put together a financial plan that then you can execute for the next 3 to 5 years and then go back to them. You will see your money grow. As we all know, the compound interest of the market is going to help your money to grow regardless of what you're invested in.
Yep.
And I think that's where you're seeing this rise even in investing advice. Like look at Dave Ramsey and what Dave Ramsey's doing, right? He's providing very, very basic investment advice for people who need that advice to be able to more effectively and successfully invest their money.
Yeah.
I still recommend, by the way, you go find an RIA, because although Dave Ramsey, I think, does give very good advice, it's very generic advice. It's not geared towards your personal situation.
Yeah.
If you sit down with an RIA or you sit down with an independent broker-dealer and you talk with them about what you would like to accomplish, a financial planning professional will help you put together a good plan.
And I mean, I think a lot of mistakes, they make a lot of mistakes by saying I've got a minimum investment requirement rather than investing with a youngster that has $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 to invest, and that's going to grow over the course of time, right? So the advice maybe for some of the financial advisors and planners out there is maybe do away with your minimums.
You know, it's very interesting because at the Oasis Group, we work a lot with wealth management firms.
Yes.
And one of the things that I explain to them is we, as an industry, will preach the time value of money, but the dichotomy is
exactly.
we don't pay any attention to that when you're working with a young individual.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is you've got so many financial planning firms that are trying to go after the high net worth
Sure.
capability in the United States. Only 5% of the entire population in the United States hits high net worth.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, think of all these people, all these youngsters that are graduating now. Like I like to call them Henrys and super Henrys, right? Henrys are high earners, not rich yet. So these are folks that are graduating in a STEM field. They have some college debt, but they have a huge ability to pay off that college debt. Or they're graduating with no college debt, but they're not necessarily in a STEM field,
Yep.
right? These people have an ability to generate an enormous amount of wealth. Super Henrys you're a STEM graduate with no college debt,
Yeah.
and you're graduating. Your earning potential in the STEM field with no college debt is 3 times as great as your contemporaries.
Yeah.
So if you were to, as a financial advisor, start working with someone who's in their 20s, it's a super Henry, their ability to generate multi-million-dollar portfolios within the first 20 years of their investing is quite high.
Yep.
So you think about that, you could have somebody in a multi-million-dollar portfolio in their 40s. You still have another 20 years
Of investing with
them.
Yep.
So I do think it's a little bit of a disservice. I think part of what we recommend with the Oasis Group is look at your fee structure, start tapping into the young generation who is hungry for advice, but may not meet your minimums. Find a different way to work with them.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think that's important. You know, you look at a high net worth individual, somebody that's got a portfolio of $1 million plus, and the first thing the financial advisor's thinking is, well, if I get 100 basis points on that, that's 10,000 a year. You know, I can, you know, I just keep, it's not bad. I get 10 of those, and I'm a six-figure income.
Exactly.
But on the other side, if you start looking at those youngsters, I mean, there's a much better opportunity for you to grow with them. Tell the audience what other services the Oasis Group provides, because it's not just that, John. It's a wider, yep.
Absolutely. So in the Oasis Group, I created the company really to tap into my sales and technology background. That's truly what my background is. And I found a bunch of like-minded people who want to work with me in the group.
Yep.
So it's not just John O'Connell. We've got about a dozen people in the firm at this point.
Yeah, good.
We primarily focus on two sides of our business. One side of the business, we work with wealth management firms. Those are typically everywhere from a wirehouse, where you would think like a very large multinational firm, all the way to a breakaway RIA. And what we help them with is technology transformation programs, really going out there and understanding what's available in the marketplace and how to be able to select technology much faster, and then how to successfully implement it. You know, wealth management is the same as every other industry.
Yep.
A large amount of technology projects fail,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And that's typically because there's not a lot of process built around that engagement and making it successful. So that's one side of our business. The other side of our business, we work with fintech firms, which are technology firms that are targeting financial services, to understand how to work with those firms, how to take your unique value proposition on that side, your market penetration strategy, what's your revenue generation strategy, how do you generate revenue,
Right.
and then how do you approach those firms to be able to put your products in the best possible light. A lot of technology firms want to tell you about their product. They don't want to tell you what problem they solve.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to tell you the problem they solve.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to help founders on that side of the world do, is to really understand, I've got a product, but if my product doesn't solve anyone's problem, no one's going to buy it.
Exactly. Yep, we'll talk about that after the break.
Excellent.
That's the sales side of this.
That's the sales
Right,
side.
exactly.
Yes.
All right, folks, don't go away. I got more with John O'Connell after this message from our sponsors. We've got more about the Oasis Group and what other things John's up to these days. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this message.
Hi, I'm Bob Hochgertle from Kings Road Brewing Company. I'm here to tell you about a brand new show on RVN television called Cooking with the King. Each week, we're going to taste and sample some of the best beers the Kings Road Brewing Company has to offer. And we're going to talk to area chefs and restaurant owners as we pair our beer with their signature dishes. We're going to teach you how to cook and eat like a king. Cheers.
A stroke can be easy to detect. A loved one can't speak, perhaps they can't move. But there's another sign of a stroke that many of us can't see. It's called spatial neglect, and it can occur during or after a stroke, causing distorted visual movements. Fortunately, there's a solution by using optical prism technology during rehabilitation. If you or a loved one have experienced a stroke, ask your doctor about spatial neglect. Spatial neglect. See the whole picture at KesslerFoundation.org.
Are you burned out, disenfranchised, disengaged, extremely distracted? Do you feel that you're lost in semantics, over-leveraged, overwhelmed? My name is Lisa Fratelli, and I have a show on RVN TV, always streaming. The name of the show is The Neuroscience of Wealth and Well-Being. The intention of this show is to explain how you can get back to homeostasis, flow states, creativity. It's highly correlated with happiness and well-being. So you can get out of overwhelm, get out of burnout, not feel distracted, and get back to your life. You will hear from experts who will get you back on track so you can enjoy your life again. RVN TV, we're always streaming.
Are you part of the Great Resignation?
Welcome back to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host, Mark Iorio. I've got John O'Connell with me, and John is the founder and CEO of the Oasis Group and the author of The Rise of the Activist Investor. But before the break, we were talking about the two areas that the Oasis Group focuses on, right? And I'm laughing because you hit the nail on the head with the whole sales thing, John. It's if you cannot prove that there's a benefit to the product that you're selling, stop selling.
Yes.
Go into another racket.
Yes.
Right? Do something else.
This may not be for you.
Right, exactly. So you're helping fintech companies understand what it is they're doing and how they're making life better for wealth managers.
For wealth management firms, right? And that can run the gamut, right? So when I look at wealth management, there's 14 segments in the wealth management market. So you've got everything from wirehouses, you think banks, credit unions, that type of the market. Even within banks, you've got regional banks, multinational banks, you've got national banks. Then when you start getting into the investments market, independent broker-dealers, hybrid firms, which are broker-dealers and registered investment advisors together.
Yep.
RIAs, and on RIAs, you've got aggregator RIAs that are aggregating and buying other RIA firms. Mm-hmm. You've got platform RIAs that are aggregating firms but have a platform that they provide those investment advisors. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the true breakaways, right? So those are the folks that have literally broken away, found their own office, and hung their own shingles, so to speak.
Yep.
Each one of those portions of the market has a different problem that they're trying to solve. You can imagine a platform aggregator is trying to offer a platform that advisors can come onto very quickly, very easily, no muss, no fuss, and get right on the platform. An aggregator RIA is trying to figure out how to convert people to a specific platform or support all these technologies across their firms. Very different problems to try to solve.
Sure.
And what I find is a lot of the fintech firms don't have that understanding. They try to approach the market as, well, it's the wealth management space. The nuances will you can imagine if you walk into an aggregator RIA and start talking about a platform play, they're not really going to be very open to that. Or if you talk to an independent.
Well, it's understanding your client, right? It's understanding
the client
and the needs of the client.
That's
and
right.
So that is a key element to this. And a lot of times fintech, they're engineers, by trade, or they're developers by trade, right? They don't know how to sell. And so the Oasis Group, you go in and help them understand and sort of dissect the things that they can do to help uncover those benefits, right?
And that drives everything else. A lot of the firms that we talk to may have had mixed results with a marketing firm or a distribution sales organization. And the reasons are because they're not very crisp about the market that they want to go after and how they're going to penetrate that market.
Yeah.
So helping them with that makes them gives them the ability to more effectively spend those dollars and see the results that they want to see.
How does the Oasis Group find new clients? Where do you get those clients? I'm sure a lot of it's networking.
A lot of it's networking. Yeah. I do a lot of speaking. I speak at quite a few conferences. I'll be speaking at least 3 this year. Some of which are around, as we were talking about before the show, some of which are around investment strategies, right? ETFs, mutual funds, and then kind of all around that space. That's where I really generate a lot of work on the RIA and the wealth management side of our business. Also, I do work with really large firms that support breakaway organizations. So on that side of the world, I work with a lot of custodians. So when a firm does decide that they want to work with a custodian and they're not quite sure what to do, sometimes the custodians will say, call the Oasis Group, they'll help you.
Cool.
On the fintech side, a lot of that does come from conference work that we do where we sit down at conferences. And then of course, LinkedIn. I'm very vibrant on LinkedIn. I'm connected to about 11,000 people right now. So, and we post quite a bit. We do a lot of content that people find interesting, and Eventually, if they find that interesting, they have a need, they wind up giving us a call.
Well, a lot of it too is educating people so that they understand exactly what Oasis, the Oasis Group does without you selling it overtly,
Correct.
right? It's, I'm John O'Connell, but I'm backed up by this group. But here's some interesting tips and information if you're a fintech company or a wealth management company on what you ought to be looking at. And then they start to associate you with a thought leader in the organization, or right, in the industry.
And I think that's something that both sides of the business that we work on, we counsel them to do a better job of that.
Yeah.
So we write a lot of white papers with the Oasis Group. We're launching a newsletter this year. We're launching it actually in the next couple of weeks. That's going to be coming out with a new website. So that newsletter just continues to promote the thought leadership we do. Today we've been doing a lot of posting on LinkedIn. We've been doing a lot of white paper work where we generate white papers around thought leadership and then speak about those at conferences. But you're limited to the number of people that are at that event, right, or that have seen the white paper. So the newsletter, I think, is going to really help from our perspective. But we've got a really solid idea of what we want to be able to talk about in that newsletter.
Good.
Helping both sides of the firms that we work with to hone their message.
That's cool.
That's what really helps them to generate that thought leadership.
Go back to maybe prior to your days at Merrill. Would you change anything? Would you do anything different?
I 100% would not, but let me explain why. I started my career as a programmer. At one point, I was at KPMG, Pete Mark, as you remember, that was back in the Big 6 days.
Yeah.
And someone turned to me and said, you should be in sales. And I made this really hard decision of leaving KPMG and diving into a bag-carrying sales role at Sybase in the financial services sector. And that, that was ups and downs. I mean, being in sales for as long as I've been in sales, you have some good days and you have some very bad days.
You do, man.
And I would not change a thing. I think what happens when you look back on your career, I think it's best to take a look at what did I take away from that situation, even if it was bad. There had been times with some of the startups that I was in where we were doing layoffs. There were times where, like at Merrill, when Merrill went out in 2008, I went out in the first round of Merrill. And they had sent me to Harvard into their Global Management Experience program, and I went out in the first round.
Yeah.
And I think what you can take away from that is sometimes bad things happen to good people.
Yeah, of course.
And you need to take away from those situations, what did I learn from this and how do I grow from it? So I think everything that happened in my career, I wouldn't change a thing.
Good. I like hearing that because you are who you are today because of all those experiences and the ups and downs, and it had to be difficult when you're working for, not directly, but a Stanley O'Neill kind of guy who, he took a couple of arrows, and I think he probably should have, honestly. It's my opinion, just my opinion.
Yep.
But 2008, when you get laid off at Merrill, it's got to be like, holy cripe, that's like a punch in the gut. You survived, and you excelled as a result of that.
It was funny. When I got laid off, I went to Oracle. And when I was going to Oracle, the first thing that he said to me was, you're going to take the commercial district for Metro New York, New Jersey. My first day on the job, I got called and they asked me where I was, and I said, I'm in the car heading over to the office. They go, you need to go to Berwyn, Pennsylvania. So I drove to Berwyn, Pennsylvania, and as I walk in, the fella at the door says, you're the new guy for financial services in Southeast. I'm like, no, I have New Jersey. That's how I found out I was going to be covering the Southeast and in an industry which was going through an enormous amount of turmoil.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But you know what? I figured it out.
Yeah.
And I was well over 150% of my number the first year that I was in sales at Oracle.
Great.
And I never looked back. I was over 150% of my number every year at Oracle.
Let's say you were interviewing a younger John O'Connell. What advice would you give him?
Well, the advice I'd give him at this point is roll with the punches, because you're going to get a couple of them.
Yeah.
And I speak at Ryder because I'm on the Ryder University Marketing Advisory Council. So I have this blessing of being able to go in and talk a couple of times a year at Ryder. And I always tell the students, if you have a plan, that plan will go out the window. Something's going to happen to throw that plan out the window. Number one. Number two, be your own advocate. the only person that's going to watch out for your career is the person you look at in the mirror in the morning.
Yeah.
You'll have great mentors, and I encourage you. I've had fantastic mentors in my career. Learn from those mentors, okay? But they are going to be transitional in your career. They're not going to be there forever. So roll with the punches. Take ownership of your career. Do not be one of these people that say, "Wow, this is really bad. I don't know why this is happening to me." Make a change then. You have the option to make a change.
Great advice, brother. Great advice. How about inspiration? Where do you find inspiration?
My kids.
That's
My
great.
wife and my kids are my inspiration, 100%.
That's great.
100%.
Yeah, that's cool.
In fact,
Love
if
it.
you take a look at the book, my entire family is represented in the book in some way.
Yeah.
And their personalities come out in the book.
Yeah.
The heroine in the book is actually modeled after a conglomeration of my mother and my kids.
That's great.
And my wife.
Awesome.
So they're my inspiration.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thank you very much. This
You're
was
welcome.
great. I
It
really
was.
appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, that camera to your left, right? Talk about how the people can get in touch with John O'Connell.
So you can reach the Oasis Group via our website at www.theoasisgrp.com. And there you can find my link tree, and from my link tree you can get to every place else, my Instagram, my LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter.
Yeah, this guy is all over. He's all over LinkedIn. So that's
Excellent.
how we connected, right?
Yes,
No,
it is.
actually,
We
we
connected
connected
here.
through right here through Get Real, and Megan Genevieve introduced me to John a while back. So thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. All right, folks, that is a wrap. You want to pick up a great book to read? Pick this up, Rise of the Activist Investor. Check out John O'Connell on LinkedIn and elsewhere. I don't know where else you are, but you're all over the place. We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week, folks. Thank you.